ghost jobs, TikTok shock, and making a gas of yourself. All this and more coming up straight ahead on the Use Your Head podcast. Welcome one and all to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Use Your Head podcast. 1 week late. Pretty much up to the hour, 1 week late. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was not able to do a show last week. Just too much going on. Some family stuff to take care of and so forth. And, you know, it reminded me of an important truth. By the way, my name is John. I'm coming to you from Big D, Dallas, Texas, where there is no playoff game. Anyway, that's fine. It doesn't really bother me. I was thinking, and I've mentioned this kind of before, but we got to have boundaries and priorities in our lives right now. And, you know, and look, I love this podcast. I love prepping it. I love doing it. I love hearing from you after I do it. I love, you know, the discussion and just the idea of putting ideas out into the ether and letting people, you know, chew on it and ignore it and hate it or love it or whatever. I love the freedom to do that. Problem is that I got a lot of things, a lot of irons in the fire, and some of those irons have to fall off. You know, there's only so many hours in the day, and I, like you, have to make tough choices. And right now, because this podcast I do for free out of the love of my own heart and my love of doing it, not that I would mind making money someday doing this, even if it's, pocket change. I have to, I had a director tell me one time, you got to take the paying gig. And so frankly, and not that I get paid for taking care of family members, but that is obviously higher on my list. So that's my explanation for missing last week. And, that's going to happen from time to time. I heard from a couple of you saying, hey, what's up? Is everything okay? I appreciate it. But sometimes we'll have to skip a week. And this was one of those weeks. There may be another one in February. I'm going to try to work around that, but I've got a lot of things going on. So this is the show where we look at the issues of the day and we use our heads. That's the title of the podcast. And it's basically the idea that there are a lot of people that would rather we not do that. Listen, I'll tell you what to think. You just go about your business. And when these complex issues, we're going to have a series of experts that's going to tell you exactly what to think about it. That is a very dangerous high wire to try to walk across. You have a brain, and you may not have, 3 PhDs from universities all over the world, and you may not have 50 years of experience in a certain field. You may not be all that articulate, or may not, you may be a very shy introverted, but you have a brain, and you can decide how to unpack the facts around a certain issue and come up with your own ideas. And that's what we encourage you to do. I do that here on the show, not to feed my ideas into your brain, but to encourage you to do it yourself. You may come up with something totally different, and I think that's great. And I'd love to hear about it. My email address is john@useyourheadpodcast.com. Let's get on with topic number 1. Topic number 1 is ghost jobs. Found an article from AM 740 KTRH News Radio from down in Houston, our neighbors to the south, big time AM news station down there. Ghost jobs becoming a large problem in the employment world. Article written by Andre Pirard. Here's what the article says. You may be familiar with this term, by the way. Here's the article. You ever apply for a job on a hiring website and the job looks great, but then months go by, it is still posted, and you never hear a word? Well, you're not alone. Welcome to the newest phenomenon of the hiring world, ghost jobs. Ooh. That's job postings you see that sit there for multiple weeks or months, disappear, and then magically reappear 2 weeks later. In a world where job openings are slim pickings as it is, this creates a new realm of dishonesty and mistrust among potential employees. You work to build a resume, you update it, you go through the 15 required application boxes, then find out it is all for nothing. That is frustrating, especially for people with college degrees who need a job. Betsy Allen Manning of Destination Workplace says she estimates around 30 to 40% of postings are fake positions. Ghost jobs are like the dating app profiles of the employment world. Plenty of flash, but when you swipe right, no one is actually there, she says. There can be plenty of logical reasons behind these postings. Maybe a job forgot to take it down. Maybe they hired someone, but more than likely, it is to build a false illusion of growth to investors. That in turn helps both job numbers and the higher-ups of companies make more money because they can tell shareholders, look, we are growing, so business is great. It makes the companies that do it look shady and dishonest, for one. But as mentioned, it is just a slap in the face to hardworking people who are looking for a job. And it is harming companies, too. 1 in 3 workers would not recommend their current workplace. Ghost jobs are amplifying that mistrust, says Manning. All right, we're going to stop right there. There's more here. They kind of go deeper into the issue. This caught my eye for one main reason, and that is I have been, and I'm going to use the V word, victimized by these ghost jobs before. A number of years ago, I had considered trying to go back into radio. I miss it. I still miss it, even though it's changed a lot. I don't know that I would like it if I did go back in, but I started, poking around on the sites that post those kinds of jobs, and these are kind of specialized. They're not like the main biggies like Indeed, and typically broadcasting jobs kind of have their own thing sometimes. But anyway, I'm looking across everything I could find on the web and found a number of positions here in Dallas. And Dallas is a big radio market, so there's a lot of competition, and I understand that, believe me. I applied for a few gigs, part-time gigs that looked like they'd be fun and could kind of get me back in the game and, scratch the itch, if you will. And what I discovered is that all the gigs I applied for, and I'm confident I don't have any proof because I don't tell you, that's the ghost part. But what I discovered was these jobs weren't real. These were openings that did not exist. And I listened to the stations. They're like, we're hiring, and I'm just going to say, we're hiring a midday jock. All right, midday DJ. And so please send your, demo tape and all this in and not tape, but, whatever it is, and your resume and so forth, and we'll get back to you. And these things sit out there for months. And I'm listening to the radio and I'm hearing the same personality on the air every day. And it could be voice tracked, could be virtual. I understand all of that. But what I came to realize is these jobs aren't real. In the old days, when you had, somebody would quit, and so you've got this position available that you need filled, you would put an ad in the paper, and it's an actual job, and you would bring people in quickly because you need, to put somebody in this important position, whether it's in radio or anything. In other words, a position was a tangible thing that needed to be filled. Now they're theoretical. And so when I use my head, because this frustrates me, I agree with Ms. Manning here. She's absolutely right. It's frustrating. And yes, it does engender distrust. Why would I want to work for somebody that starts the relationship by lying to me? Because you need a job, dummy. Well, yes, and that's what's happening a lot. And that's why these companies are getting away with this. But when we start talking about them inflating their reputation in the market, that sounds like fraud to me, right? So I'm wondering, as I use my head, is anything being discussed about that? Is there a fraud liability here? Because if you're lying, essentially, or misleading, let's say, your shareholders, that sounds a heck of a lot like fraud to me. Anyway, here's the notes I put down when I used my head. Competition for talent is fine. All right, look, it's fierce out there. Everybody wants the best people for the best price. And that's good. That's a healthy thing. But dishonesty as you do it is not fine. This problem for employers has been greatly compounded by the employment culture. And here's where I kind of started thinking for myself here. What is happening now, especially, and I'm not going to pick on Gen Z here, the young generations, but it's a fact. It's the culture's shift. Generations are different. That generation gap is a thing. And what we are seeing is a lot less loyalty to a company and a lot more flightiness, changing jobs. Look, you make me mad, I'm gone. First time you want me to come back and work in the office 4 days a week instead of 2, I'm out of here. I'm going to go find somebody that meets my needs, my desires. I'm not saying that's bad necessarily all the time. It's bad for companies. But this is the way it is. We have this quiet quitting thing that we've talked about where people just quit showing up. They'll go out, work somewhere else. They just quit showing up. And you got to chase them down. Like, do you work here anymore? Job abandonment is what we used to call that. That's a regular thing. So all of these lack of loyalty, longevity is no longer valued, has, I think, driven employers to have to use these, frankly, underhanded and dishonest strategies. You know what? We need to know what talent is out there. So let's post a position, even though it isn't real, make it sound really good, and then we can pitch our ad. We can talk about what a great company we are and all these benefits we have, and and attract people and get resumes so we can hold them on our desk. And when an actual position comes open, we can beat everybody to the punch. I think that's what's going on here. If I'm putting myself in the place of these hiring folks in this current climate where people are leaving and, it is rare. My wife tells me, my wife is a hiring manager, and she said it is rare anymore to find someone that has a job on their resume that's longer than 2-3 years. It's very rare now. Used to be you'd have a couple and they'd be 12 years, 15 years, 20. Not anymore. People quit on a dime. And I think that's what's driving a lot of this. So in a sense, it's understandable that firms are feeling that they have to resort to these tactics, but that doesn't make it right. I think, and I'm going to wrap this up here, because I look into causes, what causes these shifts. It's not enough to just say it's happened. I think it's important to think about the potential causes. What I think is this is another information age symptom. All right, we have dehumanized our culture. Everything's virtual, everything's online, including these postings. And you can create whatever you want, this image, like a dating app. And I thought Ms. Manning was dead on with that analogy. I think she's exactly right. Because looking for a job is a lot like looking for a girlfriend, right? Or a spouse. It's dating. You're dating. Hey, can we get together here and find a mutual beneficial relationship that we'll both enjoy and benefit from? That's what it is. When you started out dishonestly, all right, with fakery, the fake profile pic, making you look like Errol Flynn. By the way, for you young folks, that was a handsome actor of yesteryear. It's not a good way to start a relationship. This is the Use Your Head podcast. John McLean saying thank you for tuning in today. We spend a half hour together, and I try to keep it right on that. 30 minutes, 31 sometimes, but I respect your time. I know you're busy out there looking for jobs that hopefully really exist. Topic number 2, TikTok shock. You already know what this one's about, especially if you're a younger person. TikTok disappeared for a short period of time. I believe it was less than 24 hours, and then it was reinstated. Look, I'm going to start off by saying, before we jump into this article from NBC News, I am not a TikToker. I don't give two rips about it. I have no intention of ever looking at it, ever downloading it. And, when TikTok fell out for a while in the U.S., there were a lot of, on social media, there's a lot of people going, well, I don't care. I didn't even notice. There's people that they wear it like a badge. I'm not a TikToker. That's kind of the reputation this platform has gotten. Meanwhile, all the TikTokers were apoplectic. Anyway, let's get into the article. TikTok shock. This article from NBC News, written by David Ingram and Alexandra Marquez, is titled, Trump says he will most likely give TikTok a 90-day extension to avoid a ban. Now, I want to say up front, this article was written on the 18th. So this was before the president was inaugurated on Monday the 20th. So it says President-elect Donald Trump told NBC News Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker in a phone interview Saturday that he will most likely give TikTok a 90-day reprieve from a potential ban in the U.S. after he takes office Monday. Trump said he hadn't made a final decision, but was considering a 90-day extension of the Sunday deadline for TikTok's China-based parent company to sell to a non-Chinese buyer or face a U.S. ban. A timeout from the article. If you don't know the background here, this ban, it was said, listen, you're going to have to either sell to a non-Chinese owner, which apparently the owners of TikTok over there were considering, or we're not going to have you here anymore because there's been, allegations of espionage and so forth. So that's kind of the background story here. If you're not a TikToker, if you are, you're well aware. Article continues with a quote from now President Trump. I think that would be certainly an option that we look at. The 90-day extension is something that will most likely be done because it's appropriate. It's appropriate. We have to look at it carefully. It's a very big situation, Trump said in the phone interview. If I decide to do that, I'll probably announce it on Monday, he said. A 90-day extension under specific conditions is explicitly allowed for in the bipartisan law passed last year. But an extension Monday may not be enough to avoid the app going dark for at least a day because the current deadline for compliance is Sunday. So time out again. This is what happened. All right, the deadline was the day before the inauguration. That's not an accident, I'm sure, by the way. And so TikTok went dark, and that was a big story. And, you know, when the president says it's a big deal, he's right. There are millions and millions and millions of TikTokers out there. Okay, so we'll stop the article there. And as we know, it was down for less than a day, and then the extension was granted, and now it's back up, and now they're going to decide what to do going forward with the new administration. Look, I said it before, and I'll say it again real quick. And look, if you're a TikTok aficionado, if you're making money on TikTok, if it's part of your livelihood, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings here. Everybody's different. Everybody has tastes and preferences. I don't like Facebook either. Because I'm part of the older generations who find that stuff a little weird and not terribly useful. If you've grown up with it, you have a very different perspective, and that's okay. So I'm not poking fun. I mean, I am a little bit, but it's innocent fun. Okay. I respect everyone's opinion, but here's a hill I will die on. And I say this, you know, to kind of encapsulate my thoughts, because I was not sorry that TikTok went down. Anyway, we'll get to that in a second. Censorship is always bad. I'm just going to say that. That's a hill I'll die on. Censorship is always bad. And I don't care, you know, what the government's been saying to justify censorship over the past few years. Well, this is misinformation. This started during COVID, right? This is misinformation and it's dangerous, so we need to censor it. In other words, saying, you stupid people can't use your heads. You don't have one. So it's up to us to take care of you. I think that is fundamentally and morally wrong and incorrect, frankly. Yes, there are some people that need a little help, but the vast majority of people have a perfectly good brain bag and they can make their own decisions about things. And they can decide if they want to listen to a Dr. Fauci, or they want to listen to Pfizer or Donald Trump or Nancy Pelosi or whoever. They can decide, and they should. That's a big, big part of what America is. So censorship, always bad. Like the caveman, censorship bad, information good. Going on, as I used my head, I thought, no government should ever wield that kind of power, despite how noble it claims to be in its motives. So that's kind of the idea I just articulated. They claim it's noble. Look, we're just trying to protect you. We're just trying to help you. It's like the parent says to the 3-year-old, but we're not 3-year-olds, are we? Our one-day TikTok rehab period, which is kind of what it seemed like. If you take an addict, and again, I'm saying this softly. I'm not trying to insult addicts or TikTokers, but let's face it, many people are addicted to their social media, and especially TikTok. It was like a rehab period. People freaked out when they tried to pull up TikTok and the little thing says, we're sorry, TikTok's not available in the United States right now. It freaked people out. And a lot of those videos, you should go look at them. Look at the TikTok freak out videos. They're funny. And I'm not, again, I know some of these people are legitimately traumatized, but really? Anyway, it was very telling to see these types of emotional reactions. There's a pretty long list. And here's where I got to the use my head part. There's a pretty long list of real harm that this platform has enabled. And I'm careful to say not caused. The platform is just a platform, but it enables harmful content to get out there. Should it be censored? No. And I'm going to get to, that doesn't make sense. Are you saying that, we should have all these crazy TikTok challenges that are hurting and in some cases killing young people? No, I'll get to that. Hang on, hang in there. But what good, is there any redeeming value for TikTok? And I wrote down entertainment because obviously that's number one, right? People look at this stuff to be entertained. But the arena in Rome was entertainment. Was that okay? So then I wrote down income. There's a lot of people that make income, sometimes close to full-time income on TikTok, but a lot of times it's a supplemental income. And I saw some users go, well, y'all don't understand. Times are tough and food's expensive and so is gas. And so TikTok helps me with my budget. Okay, you know what? That's called innovation, and I like that. But dope dealers make a lot of money too, so is that okay? And I'm not comparing TikTokers to dope dealers. What I'm saying is you can't justify things just because they have these values, even if they're real. you got to go deeper. All right, these are not perfect analogies, but there's something to think about. Do I think they should ban TikTok? No, that's un-American, okay? Do I think that we should, as TikTokers, and let's say, for example, I'm one, I'm not, and I never will be, but if you're a TikToker, do I think that you should use your head, police yourself, and exercise some self-governance? Yes, I absolutely do. Because self-governance is a big part of living in a free society, all right? Our government should not be spoon-feeding us, and that's not good for you. Don't touch that hot stove. That's not good for you. Don't jump off a bridge and try to land on your feet because it's the TikTok video person. That's not good. You're going to break your legs and maybe be in a wheelchair the rest of your life. Look, you've got to self-govern. And in this wild information age where the content is all over the place and a lot of it's harmful, you've got to be responsible for self-governance. Isn't it funny how that theme keeps coming up over and over and over again? Topic number 3 on the Use Your Head podcast is calling making a gas of yourself. Yeah, clever, huh? That's kind of cheesy, but I wrote it down anyway. This story is disturbing. You know, it seems like lately I've gotten into this kind of habit of making the third topic disturbing. That's not on purpose. I guess I like to keep it light at first, and then once you're listening, kind of deliver the stuff that's a little harder. This story bothered me a lot, and it does, in a way, segue with topic number 2, making a gas of yourself. I found this article at USA Today, written by Rachel Hale, and this is, here's the title: College Kids, an Old Drug and Why It's Everywhere Again. An old drug has taken on new popularity, and it has doctors concerned. Once known by nicknames like laughing gas and hippie crack, the inhalant nitrous oxide, a sedative commonly used by healthcare providers, is getting attention online. In a TikTok with over 4.4 million views, Hootie Hurley, one half of a touring DJ group that frequently performs fraternity shows, talked about watching inhalant abuse unfold at a frat house. "We walk into the president's chambers at the fraternity and there's 3 dudes carrying like butane tanks," Hurley said. "And they're going, 'Keep going, keep going, keep going,' as a student huffed the gas." Hurley says he witnessed the student pass out for several seconds, and he met a woman later in the evening who was also huffing, which illustrated to him the behavior wasn't contained to a single group of students or fraternity. Now, inhalant abuse isn't new, but drug abuse experts say the prevalence of smoke shops and accessibility of online shopping have made it easier for people to purchase nitrous oxide containers in large quantities. As young people grapple with mental health issues and the pressures of young adulthood, social media posts about huffing have emboldened teens to try it and contributed to its normalization. Nitrous oxide is a short-acting sedative that slows down the nervous system by restricting oxygen flow to the brain, producing a high. The substance produces vapors that can lead to short-term impaired vision and speech, as well as nausea and drowsiness. Sounds like fun. Back to the article. It can also have more dangerous side effects like heart failure, long-term memory loss, attention and judgment problems, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse. Long-term use of inhalants is also associated with mood and anxiety disorders, such as depression. All right, we'll stop there. So nitrous is what they give you at the dentist, right? We've all had it. Laughing gas, you feel like you're floating a little bit. They give you just enough to take the edge off so that you don't freak out when they stick the giant needle in your gums. Ugh. I got to go to the dentist Thursday, by the way, so I'm being careful here. But no, seriously. It has its uses, and in a professional setting, it's used in a way where all it does is take the edge off, and it's perfectly safe. You're still getting plenty of oxygen to your brain, and you're not passing out, and you're not hallucinating and all that, okay? And so I'm not saying we need to get rid of it. It has a real use in healthcare, especially at the dentist, okay? But when I use my head, look, what can we say about this? This is horrifying, okay? Once again, TikTok is being used to promote and coolize these dangerous practices. Now, in this case, it's being used to bring awareness. And so I say bully for this DJ team who is saying, look, we saw this and we feel like we need to say something. Okay. And so, yes, these types of platforms can be used for good. Saying, look, this may look cool, but look, all of these things and you can die from this. Of course, you deprive your brain of enough oxygen. What happens? It dies. In case you haven't taken biology yet, if your brain dies, you're done for. Okay. So putting this whole TikTok thing aside, that's why I said it sort of correlates, but not really. Look, there's not a whole lot you can say about this, except that, college students who love, by the way, to lecture old fogies like me on what's really true in the world and how I'm so wrong and out of touch. Can't tell you how many college students have dressed me down, telling me that I'm clueless. And I'm like, I went to college, so don't. But anyway. And yet they go back to campus and they do stuff like this. Not all of them. But apparently there's evidence that this is growing and becoming more widespread. And because we have all these smoke and vape and, pipe shops, bongs and hookahs and all, this other kind of stuff, which again, it makes this stuff easier to get. Nitrous oxide in and of itself is not poisonous if it's used responsibly. But apparently you can buy it online. That's what this is implying. You can buy little capsules of this stuff and you can huff it and get high or die or suffer any number of debilitating problems. Sounds like a great way to spend a weekend. Anyway, these same college kids that think they're so smart are now starving their brains of oxygen willingly. So parents, assuming your kid even still listens to you, friends, peers, anyone, you must become what I'll call, and this is when I used my head, this is what I think we need. These people on social media are called what? Influencers, right? And whether they're on social media or in real life, look, if you're pledging a frat, the president of the frat is somebody that you look up to, right? They're the one that is supposed to be teaching you the values. If you want to be a part of this club, this is how you be. And they're in the president's chambers, as they called it, which I found amusing, huffing nitrous and passing out and then giving it to chicks and having them do it. And you can just imagine what happens, use your imagination. Okay, we've all heard about the abuses that go on to that end. We got to have counter influencers because the influencers often in this culture are especially the ones that are deliberately harming themselves and others, like these huffing inhalant people. We need to have counter influencers. And it could be something as simple as saying, oh, yeah, passing out and not remembering what happened last night and damaging your heart and all of those things. That sounds like a great idea. Or does it? Take 5 minutes and think about having a debilitating mental, a brain injury where you can't feed yourself anymore because you took too much of this stupid nitrous because you thought it'd be fun instead of having a couple of beers and going home and being responsible. We need counter influencers. And so who's going to step up? I think that social media is a great way to do that because you can post whatever you want, especially since now we're rejecting censorship. Why not go on and look, if you're a Gen Z or a college student and you're horrified by this and you're seeing your friends die or become debilitated, or you're concerned they will, that might motivate you for a cool side hustle while you study. Become a counter-influencer. Get out there and make it cool to not be an idiot and to not do things that are harmful to yourself and others and the world around you. Because, and look, this thing, that a lot of these people saying, well, there's mental health out there. There's all these pressures of young adulthood. Yeah, okay, fine. That's not new. The mental health piece is a little bit. But look, adolescence and growing into adults and going to college is high pressure. It always has been. Okay? That's not new. So therefore, it's not an excuse to be using all this dope. Find healthy ways to deal with stress. Go for a run. All right? Paint. Do things, and I don't mean paint graffiti. Paint. Read. Engage in some sort of spiritual activity, like go to church or temple or what, do something that's not pickling your brain and then there through peer pressure is pickling others. Be a counter influencer. It is not cool to destroy the gray matter that you have because that stuff doesn't grow back. So find a way to deal with all these pressures, many of which are a bit contrived. But in any case, if they're real to you, be a counter-influencer and show people that there is a way to deal with this stuff in a healthy way. Use your head. Don't abuse it, and don't make a gas of yourself. All right, that's the end of that. Fun being with you again. Again, sorry about last week. Good to be back with you. I plan to be with you again next week on the Use Your Head podcast. My email address is john@useyourheadpodcast.com. Open to whatever you have to say. Have a super week. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.